But I swear to God, this is absolute Bible truth. The patron saint of elections is Saint Chad. I'm not making that up. Apparently, he was elected bishop, and some people really, protested, and he was a very humble guy. So he said, "That's okay. I'll step aside, and somebody else can be bishop." And then we went through this 2 or 3 times where he kept getting elected and kept deferring until finally he got to be the bishop. But he was the patron saint of elections. Who else would you pick? I guess maybe one of the election brothers. I don't know. Yeah. It helps to be a South Sider to understand it. I worked for 2 years on the switchboard at Election Brothers Hospital when I was in high school, and it was something else. 865-3333. 3933 South Broadway. Yeah. Oh yeah, it was a lot of fun. Election Brothers. Yeah. And in case you're curious, what if you plug in and somebody's on the phone? Well, you get this if you try to do that. You will bust in, but it will be terrible feedback. You just say, "Sorry, that line is busy." Anyway, let's get down to business. Well, I probably should have put this in. Anyway, Election Brothers Hospital. I think it's closed now. I don't think it's, yeah.
Opened up under another name for a while.
Oh, yeah.
I think the guy went to jail or something, didn't he?
Oh, really?
He was a swindler or something.
Oh, boy. Yeah,
It was a devil place.
The legend is that the possessed boy, they brought him down to Election Brothers. Because Election Brothers first of all, the Catholic hospital, and it had a psych ward, which most hospitals did not, of any kind. And so it was there. They kind of said, this kid, he's acting like he's possessed. No, well, he sure is. And sure enough, he was. But I remember my most vivid recollection. I think I've told this story before, but I was coming down. It was Saturday night. I'm coming down from my break. Now, the neighborhood down there. I mean, there's a word they use in South St. Louis to describe a certain kind of person, and it starts with an H, and it usually applies to people who come from Indiana. Where apparently it's not so bad of a thing, but in South St. Louis, if you're a Hoosier, you're just a real. Well, anyway. Well, that neighborhood down there was a bunch of Hoosiers. There's no beating around the bush. And so I come down for a break, and the switchboard's on the second floor, facing right toward Broadway, and right underneath was the admitting office, and right across the hall from the admitting office was the emergency room, and right next to that was the coffee lounge. So I was going to the coffee lounge for my break. I get down there, there's huge commotion, all kinds of people, just T-shirts and blue jeans and barefoot and, all this kind of stuff, filthy, and they're all swarming around, and there's doctors and nurses there too. And also I noticed that this one guy, who's kind of the center of the action, the front of his T-shirt is all blood, red blood, and there's the business end of a pair of scissors stuck in his chest, and just the handle was sticking out. Well, they told me to get lost, so okay, I did. But I found out later on, I'm sorry, this really isn't funny, I suppose, but this guy, those scissors had been placed there by this guy's wife. Oh. And he was refusing treatment because he wanted to die, so she'd be up for a murder rap. Oh my gosh. And I'm thinking, that's an interesting legal point, I mean, yeah, she did kill him, but, well, he could have been as I found out later on, he did die. But he couldn't work on him until he, passed out, which he did, and then by that time it was too late. But I don't know how that worked out. Interesting. It was South St. Louis. Okay. 1387. To prepare for a worthy reception of, this is the Eucharist, of course. We're still on the subject of the Eucharist. We just saw how, we said, the Lord, I am not worthy, and that's, the words of the prayer of the centurion, but it fits perfectly for receiving Holy Communion. We are not worthy of this. We just aren't, but by the singular action of divine grace, he gives it to us anyway. And so much does Jesus want us to be saved. To prepare for worthy reception of the sacrament, the faithful should observe the fast required in their church. Now, that has undergone quite some changing over the years. I imagine when most of you who are a little bit older than I am, you were required to fast from midnight. Yeah. So that the first food you took in the day would be the Eucharist. And then afterwards you would break your fast at the meal that is called breakfast, which some of the Brits still pronounce it breakfast. I'm going to breakfast. And it is. It's the breaking of the fast. That's where it came from. When I made my first communion in 1960, now this is before the Vatican Council, but we were only required to fast 3 hours. Yeah. Now you're required to fast only 1 hour before you actually receive communion. So unless you stop by McDonald's for an Egg McMuffin on the way to Mass, you pretty well have followed the law for the fast. Obviously, the Church wants people to receive Holy Communion, and that the fact you might have nibbled something beforehand, shouldn't be an obstacle. I remember I was in quite a conundrum for my first communion because I had, hadn't eaten anything for 3 hours. That was no problem. The problem was there was a piece of a ham or something that stuck to one of my teeth from the previous night's dinner. So I proceeded to consume that. I'm thinking, did I just break the fast? To this day, I don't know. I don't know. I was trying to do it right, but there's certain things you just get out of control. Also, the same law to the Eucharistic fast applies as to the fast on Palms or Ash Wednesday and Good Friday. If you're over the age of 60, you don't have to fast. It's recommended if you're in good health, but they don't want to. They figure people over 60 have a foot and a half in the grave, and hey, it's the law of the Church. It's the Church you're dealing with here, and. Anyway, but it's a wonderful idea. I don't know what's so big deal about fasting from midnight. I mean, really.
The previous generation had to fast from water even.
Yeah. Yeah, the history of the laws of fasting in the Catholic Church are very interesting. In the very earliest days, fasting meant nothing. It's sort of like Ramadan with the Muslims. My brother lived in Saudi Arabia for 5 years, and he was saying how they really keep Ramadan. From sun up to sundown, they don't eat. They don't take in anything, not medicine, not water, not food, nothing. But during Ramadan, they all gain weight because after the sun goes down, you don't have to fast anymore, and they stuff themselves.
Before the sun goes up, they get up and they eat.
Yeah, so they all put on weight during Ramadan, the season of fasting. And the Church's law on fasting is really kind of ridiculous too. To fast in the Catholic Church, it means you can have a minor meal for breakfast and a minor meal for lunch. And as long as your main meal is 2 times, doesn't exceed double. Doesn't exceed the addition of your breakfast and lunch. So in other words, if you have a huge breakfast and a huge lunch, as long as you eat almost the same amount for dinner, you're fasting. Wait a minute. This doesn't sound right to me, but, and really, the thing is what they're counting on is people have the real spirit of fasting. Jesus told the apostles that, when they asked him, why do your disciples not fast? And there's a lot of scholars who believe that the point of fact, they actually were fasting. They just weren't doing it the way people normally fasted in those days. That they would, they would put a crepe over their face and they go, oi, oi, I'm suffering, oi, oi. Moishe, what? I'm fasting. Oh, folks, Moishe's fasting. Give him a hand. Oh, no, please don't do it. Well, I don't know, maybe a little bit, And they made a big production out of it. And so when Jesus, the gospel we hear every Good Friday, or Ash Wednesday is, when you fast, comb your hair, wash your face, don't let people know you're fasting, because, and frankly, it being something you're doing for God, it should put a smile on your face. It shouldn't be something that makes you miserable. It draws you closer to God. The whole idea behind fasting, it really is a big part of the spiritual exercises of St. Ignatius. This guy was a soldier, and whenever he approached any situation, it was like a guy on campaign. We got to come up with a strategy. We're going to make this happen, and or find out why it didn't work, and then we find out we're going to go back again, and we're going to do it till we finally get it right. And his whole thing was that you're looking for certain graces like patience, humility, chastity, whatever virtue you're looking for. And if you ask God for this virtue, He's going to give it to you. Because He said, ask, you'll receive. Seek, you will find. Knock, the door will be open. I'm not going to give you a scorpion if you ask for an egg. I mean, come on, So we know that God's giving these things. And if you're not getting it, it's because there's something in you that's blocking it. You don't really want it. I mean, you say you want it, but you really don't. And so to remove those blockages to grace, you fast. It opens you up. Or he said, if that doesn't work, it doesn't work for everybody. Things like denying yourself sleep. Ooh, that's a tough one. People, even in self-flagellation, actually beat themselves with a whip. Some of the great saints did that. If you ever go to Philadelphia, there's a church on the north side of town. It's a terrible neighborhood. But it's where the crypt and the museum of St. John Neumann is on display. I went there once, and my brother lived there, and made sure I got there in the early morning. And they had all, like a museum of all his personal effects, one of which was a barbed wire necklace that he used to wear underneath all his bishop's regalia. Yeah, I mean, it was barbed wire. It was like a crown of thorns, and he did it, for penance. Oh, geez, But those are the kinds of things that really open you up to make you receptive to and I know just from a physiological standpoint, dieting is which is very similar to fasting, the purpose is different. It really opens up clarifies your thought capacity. You really do focus a lot better when you're fasting. Now, obviously, if you get too far into it, you keep thinking about cheeseburgers, which is understandable. But it really is, and I made this point before, but I think it's very telling that when you read the Acts of the Apostles, the history of the first Catholics, it doesn't say they fasted, and it doesn't say they prayed. It always says they prayed and fasted and prayed, never the one without the other. And I hate to say it, but fasting is something that's pretty much evaporated from our Catholic devotional life. But it really is a very important thing. And if we really look serious about holiness, fasting is a great way of doing that. Again, you just don't tell other people. You just people always ask, "What do you give them for Lent, Father?" I can't tell you that. Come on. I always tell them give up smoking, which I've never smoked. So, but I don't smoke at all during Lent or any other time of the year. But the fasting really is, and especially for receiving Holy Communion, you receive much more worthily, much more effectively when you keep the Eucharistic fast. And we've really gone through a lot of changes. When we first started, fasting was like Ramadan. There's nothing in the. What's the? Is it NPO? Is that? Yeah. Okay. Are you nurses? Nothing through the mouth. Then they started getting it. Well, you can maybe drink some water. well, you can have a cracker, you know. If you really have it up against it, yeah, you can have a piece of bread. Um, they call that taking a collation. And, you know, the fasting is just getting to you, so you have to eat something, so you take a collation, okay. Which is why the Italian word for breakfast is colazione, which is the same as basically our breakfast, breaking the fast, taking a collation. Collation means setting it aside. But then it got to be, well, you can have fish, but you can't have meat. And then it got to be, well, you can you can have milk meats like cheese and eggs, but you can't have the real meat. But you can have fish. And I don't know, I never understood why fish. They say it because it's cold-blooded. Yeah, but it's still kind of meaty, you know. And some fish taste really, really good, you know, especially when it's prepared right.
How did the fish on Fridays thing get started?
Yeah, because they kept relaxing the fasting rules more and more all the time until they got to where, okay, you can do this. Well, all right, you can do this, but not the, okay, but you can do this. And finally, it's like the way it is now. You know, technically, Catholics are obliged to abstain from meat on Friday, every Friday, not just Good Friday, every Friday. And if you don't, you're supposed to replace that with something else, some other act of penance or self-denial, preferably on Friday. There was the custom in the early church. Some places they fasted on Friday, and some because of the crucifixion, but some they fasted on Wednesday because, believe it or not, the actual trial of Jesus, the Jewish trial of Jesus, took place on Wednesday of Holy Week, not on Holy Thursday or Good Friday. It took place on Wednesday, and so that reason they had some places they fasted on Wednesday. Now, the great story is that St. Ambrose was the Bishop of Milan, and which at the time was the capital of the Roman Empire. And some of his parishioners said, Father Ambrose, we're going down to Rome. He said, oh, that's great. He said, but we got a problem. Up here in Milan, we fast on Wednesdays, but in Rome, they fast on Fridays. What should we do? And St. Ambrose rattled off the classic line, when in Rome, do as the Romans do. Follow the local customs. And that was, you know. But somehow it's all become universal. I don't know if there's any place, if any of the Orthodox or any of the more obscure, you know, Catholic areas of the world still keep to the Wednesday fast, but it's pretty much all become Friday. And again, it's supposed to be not so much fasting, but again, hey, why not? I mean, what's so terrible about that? It's like the Irishman goes to the restaurant and he says a Friday during Lent, and he asks the waiter, "Sir, would you be serving any whale?" "No, we don't serve whale." "Aye, okay." "Well, do you have any dolphin then?" "No, we don't have any dolphin." "You got any octopus?" "No octopus either." "Well, the good Lord knows I asked for fish. Give me a steak."
Anybody that's ever been in service, you receive dispensation, like in service, you can eat meat on Friday.
Well, there was a screenwriter, Paddy Chayefsky. He wrote The Hospital. He wrote Network. He wrote Marty. Won a bunch of Oscars. He really was a very good writer. But he was a Jewish guy. He got the nickname Paddy because when he was in the service, he didn't like the meat they were serving, but the Catholics all got fish, so he told everybody he was Catholic. And so they looked at him and said, "Chayefsky, Catholic? Yeah, okay, Paddy." You know? And he liked being called Paddy Chayefsky, so he just kept it. But anyway.
I always thought Friday was good in there. I mean, most people didn't like fish. I got all kinds of fish.
There you go. There you go. But, you know, the whole idea is that it's supposed to be a penance, for crying out loud. It's supposed to be something that you deny yourself So as to sharpen yourself, when you receive Holy Communion, you receive it more worthily, with greater understanding, and with greater effect. And it does work that way. It really does. When they finally, they redid the tomb of St. Francis of Assisi back in the 60s. Now, if you go there now to the Basilica, the church just goes back to the 13th century, but the crypt is now, just within the last 60 years. And for the first time in centuries, they actually exposed his what was left of his skeleton. Wasn't much left. Turns out the guy he had to have been absolutely emaciated. He hardly ate anything the last couple of years of his life. That he lived just on the Holy Eucharist. Ooh, okay. But there are other saints who fell into that category. But the story is that he died eating macaroons. That he loved macaroons, and somebody provided them for him, and he was wolfing them down when he finally died. So maybe they pushed him over the edge. I don't know. Come on, hi Jeannie. Come on in. We got a chair. Oh, there we go. Yeah. Pride of place, Jeannie. Okay. So again, the fast right now is ridiculously simple. Just don't eat anything for an hour right before you receive Holy Communion, and like I say, unless you're stopping by the drive-thru at McDonald's on the way in, you pretty much can't miss it, really. But it should really be something more than that. Bodily demeanor, gestures, clothing ought to convey the respect, solemnity, and joy of this moment when Christ becomes our guest. Yeah, people should dress up for church. People should behave in such a way as to be aware of the presence of God. That's something we have really lost the last 50 years or so. People just talk in church like they're anywhere. And I think we've all done it. You run into somebody and it's like, okay, they start yakking it up. That's what really bugs me whenever we have a funeral here and they have a wake in the lunchroom. Now, I don't mind having a wake in the lunchroom, but what usually happens is people start drifting over to church and they start socializing in church like as if they were in the lunchroom. You have to throw them out and you're in the presence of God, and oh Lord, sometimes it gets really, really bad. I remember I was my nephew's confirmation sponsor when he got confirmed, and it was at their parish down in South County. And I was absolutely scandalized by how loud and disrespectful the people were, waiting for their kids to be confirmed. I thought, I'm looking around saying, am I the only guy who's, the bishop's standing there and he's yakking it up too. I thought, okay. Okay, I guess I must be wrong. I don't know. But anyway, these, and you say, why do people not go to church? Well, they don't believe in it. Why should they? They don't act like they believe in it, and so therefore, it's not too surprising that their faith diminishes. There's that story they tell, you probably heard this, about the guy, the priest is offering daily mass, and he noticed that there's this dark-complected fellow who keeps coming in the back of church and doesn't seem to know what's going on. So finally he had a chance to talk to the guy, and sure enough, he was a Hindu guy from India. And he said, sir, there's something here that intrigues me. I know there's something here that I really want to be a part of, but I don't understand what's going on. And so the priest explained to him, that this is the Eucharist, this is Christ's body and blood, this is God, taking the form, bread and wine, and all the things we Catholics believe. And the man, he said, look, if I believed that was Christ there on the altar, I would never dare to come in this place. I would leave back out and bowing and draping showing him the greatest. And he's, yeah, you're right. Yeah, yep. That's not such a bad way to look at things. I don't know. The sad thing is that the things that have really, I think, led to almost complete collapse of our respect and understanding of the Eucharist. We talked about this before, but we went from being that this Eucharist is so sacred, you can't touch it. You have to have the consecrated hands of a priest to touch this thing, to where anybody can give the hand or give out communion. Oh, and you expect people not to, lose faith in that. The idea of receiving under both kinds, where for years no, you can't do this. This is with the priest. And now and we got people wearing blue jeans and flip flops and T-shirts, handed out the wine, And now I was at a funeral recently, and a priest and a lot of priests there, and the pastor who was handing out the chalice, he's just handing out like it was cotton candy at the picnic. I go, geez, But anyway, we're getting, it's all starting to change again, which I think is good. A lot of parishes are putting kneelers up for the people who want to kneel. They can kneel, receive Holy Communion. Yeah, standing for communion rather than kneeling, receiving in the hand rather than on the tongue from a lay person, and then finally on both kinds. And ironically, they put all those changes introduce those practices to try to engender a greater love and respect for the Eucharist. Oh, well, that didn't happen. In fact, just the opposite has happened. And it's as low an ebb as it ever has been. Most Catholics are actually indistinguishable from Protestants when it comes to our understanding of what the Eucharist is. It's terrible. It's absolutely horrible. Anyway, but I see it all starting to change, though. I think I'm really impressed with our younger priests. We don't have a lot of them, but they're really good men, and I expect as they come into the upper echelons of the church, they're going to do great things. I think. I hope we can live long enough to see it. But anyway, I'm really impressed by these guys. They're very, very good. 1388, in its keeping with the very meaning of the Eucharist, that the faithful, if they have the required dispositions, receive communion each time they participate in the Mass. Yeah, that's something that's undergone quite a history. In the earliest days of the Church, we didn't have Mass every day. The only day we had Mass was Sunday, and we had, from starting with Easter Sunday, the day Christ rose from the dead, up until last Sunday, every Sunday the Church has had Mass, but not through the week. That's something that came up gradually. As the feast days of the martyrs, as the feast days of Christmas, the birth of Christ, we started observing more and more major feast days, and then that's how the practice of daily Mass has come into existence. But there's still one day every year where we have never had Mass. Good Friday. Yeah, of course you knew. And, but the idea of receiving communion every day, it wasn't something, because the deep understanding and appreciation we have for the Eucharist now, and we really do in the official teachings of the Church, it doesn't translate well into the pew so much. But the Church always believed, of course, the Eucharist was Jesus' true body and blood. In fact, that's one of the reasons why St. John's Gospel was written, to refute a group of people called the Allegists, who denied the virgin birth, they denied Jesus' divinity, and they also denied that the Eucharist was Jesus' true body and blood, which is why in St. John's Gospel we find the longest discourse Jesus gives on any one topic, and it's the Eucharist. It's this famous 6th chapter of John. To refute the Allegists who disputed or denied that the Eucharist really was Jesus' body and blood. So it's something the Church always believed in. But the idea of it becoming the part and parcel of our devotional life as Catholics, of receiving communion every day, and at the same time, the Church encourages people to receive communion every day. we went through periods where the Eucharist was regarded so holy that okay, your first communion, viaticum when you're dying, that's it. That's the only time to receive communion. My own grandmother, who died in 1994, only received communion twice her whole life. Went to Mass every Sunday, my mom and dad. Came to my first Mass. She wouldn't receive communion at my first Mass. I go, Grandma she had some strange ideas, but
Did you feel like she wasn't worthy?
yeah, what contaminated a lot of Catholic thinking, a couple of centuries ago, was the Jansenist heresy. And the Jansenists, because every heresy begins by affirming something that's true, something that the Church teaches. But that's all they have. The rest of it, it goes out on a tangent. But the one thing the Jansenists taught was true, is that God hates sin. He hates sin. He really does. That's true. There's no two ways about it. He loves sinners, which is something the Jansenists didn't, latch on to. But an awful lot of people running from that, and of course one of the conclusions the Jansenists came up with is that, you're just not worthy to receive communion. You are such a stinking sinner. How dare you receive Holy Communion? And people didn't, In fact, once upon a time, it was part of the law that people couldn't receive communion, except on, not even on Sunday, like First Communion as viaticum when you're dying. I went to my cousin's my cousin's wedding Mass in Troy, Illinois, this would have been 71 or 72. And the pastor there was this interesting character. He never quite got the changes of the Vatican Council down. He'd always say, "The Lord be with you, with your spirit, let us pray." In other words, he would say the priest part, and he'd say your part too, and then come back with his own part. And I'm trying to go, And I'm sitting it was a very small church, not much bigger than this room, and I'm sitting in like the second pew. And my mom is sitting next to me. I was in the seminary, but I wasn't, close to ordination. And when the priest came down to give the couple, my cousin and her husband, Holy Communion, Mom and I got up to go, and we walk up, and he turns around and goes back to the tabernacle, and I'm going, okay. He just wasn't giving out communion every day. And that was kind of a routine thing. One of the big changes of the St. Pius X back in the early 20th century was that you didn't have to wait till you're 14 to make your first communion. You make your first communion as soon as you're old enough to realize this is not just normal bread or not some magical thing, but that you really have a grasp on what the Eucharist is. It's Jesus' body and blood. And that has grown to where now people are entitled to receive communion more than once on a given day. What happens a lot is if you go to morning Mass, okay, that's the Mass of whatever day that is. Like last Saturday was All Souls Day. So if you went to the parish Mass at 8 o'clock, okay, then we had a funeral. So that's a different Mass, so you can go if you at the funeral. And then the evening at 5 o'clock, we had the Sunday Mass. So it's all one day, you can receive 3 times. You have to be there for the whole Mass. You just can't pop in for communion. I remember, every year the Carmelites on Clayton Road have that novena. It's in July, leading up to the Feast of Our Lady of Mount Carmel. And it used to be that they would we had a bunch of transitional deacons every year, like there was 15 in my class. They would have them guys come out and pass out Holy Communion, because thousands of people would come to this. It would be really huge. And so I remember I was doing my turn, and I was giving out Holy, and this sweet young thing, gal looked to be about 20 years old, pretty little thing, comes up, and she's obviously wearing a homemade, handmade habit of some kind. It was really, really you know, not all that well put together, but it looked like a religious habit of some kind. And she had rosaries around her. She had scapulars on. She had medals attached to it, and she kneels down for communion. And I go, okay, body of Christ, amen. So she goes off. So afterwards, I said, man, I had this gal come up to me, and she really, and I described her, and the guy said, well, she came up to me too. Well, she came up to me too. He probably went from one communion line to the other. I go, okay. And, you know, that act in itself is not per se sinful, you know. But what the church has always tried to safeguard is that people think that it's like magic, that one host is good, two hosts is better, three hosts better still, you know, leading up to a whole suborium. You know, come on. You know, our belief has always been that one host is sufficient, and even if it's the tiniest particle, sometimes under certain situations they've had to break hosts into tiny little particles. Yes?
Father, how do you explain, like when the process was once a week, when they would say the Our Father, like how do you, like our daily bread, how do they put those two together back when they weren't doing it daily?
Oh, yeah, okay. Well, first of all, the word daily is interesting because the idea of daily Mass was pretty much established by the time of St. Jerome, which is why he translated the word epiousion, which is the actual Greek word. That's why he translated it actually two different ways. Because there's two different versions of the Lord's Prayer, right? One in St. Luke and one in St. Matthew. The one we say is the Lord's Prayer is the version from St. Matthew, which has two extra lines. And we understand that each line is an explanation of the line that comes before it. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come. That's where Luke ends. He goes right to give us this day our daily bread. But Matthew has the line, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. In other words, what does it mean for God's kingdom to come? It means that God's will is done on earth as it is in heaven, perfectly, you know, by the saints. Okay. When it came time to translating the Our Father, there was a word contained in that prayer that Jerome didn't really understand what it was, because it wasn't really a word. It was sort of a made-up type word. It's the word epiousion. It goes, pater hemon, ha en tois uranois, hagias theto ta onomasu, el theto he basileasu. You're with me now, of course. Theto el genetasu, hos en uranu kai epiges, ton arton hemon ton epiousion. Give us this day our epiousion bread. And Jerome put a little asterisk and said, I don't know what this word means. It either comes from the word epimi, which means to be above, to be superior to surpass every other bread, or the verb ephiemi, which means to come from above. Clearly talking about the Eucharist. So in St. Matthew's version, in St. Luke's version, he translates it supersubstantialem, which means supernatural. Give us this day our supernatural bread. But in Matthew's version, he uses a different Latin word. He uses the word quotidianum, which means daily. And he put a little asterisk there and said, the reason why he translated it doesn't mean daily. The reason why I translated that was because we go to Mass every day, receive communion every day, so it becomes our daily bread. A lot of people have gotten confused about that, to think that you're asking for your basic human needs, what I need to get by this day, you know, our daily bread. No. What we're praying for is the Eucharist, pure and simple. That's why we always say it right before Holy Communion. And I don't know if I'm answering your question or not. Okay. But, because Jerome lived, I think he died in the year 420. So that's, you know, several centuries after. But by that time, daily Mass had become kind of a thing. But he developed slowly. There was one, I think it was Pope Hadrian II, who was a Dutchman. He was the last non-Italian before John Paul II to be elected Pope. And he arrived in Rome for his coronation kind of late. because he had the practice of saying Mass every day, which a lot of priests didn't. So it was just one of those things.
So if you have a priest that's assigned to, a parish priest that's assigned to a parish, they're not required to say Mass every day?
Oh yeah, they
They
sure
are,
Oh yeah,
okay.
oh yeah. This is 5 centuries ago.
Okay.
So
Can you explain
no, every priest, yeah.
219?
I'm sorry.
Will you explain, 219 here?
Okay.
At the very bottom?
Yeah. Let's see what that refers to. Yeah, that's the canon law that pertains to receiving communion once or more than once. Because people are.
It says only a second time on the same day.
Where do you see that?
Well, maybe your book doesn't look like ours.
Oh no.
So,
Okay.
oh,
Yeah.
they're getting it from 222.
Okay. Well, I can't explain that. They've always said that you can receive more than once, but it's got to be it doesn't even have to be a different celebration. Like the deacon and I receive every communion every
Right, every Mass.
every Mass, 3 on Sunday, and it's the same celebration. It's not a different, like a funeral or wedding
You
or
guys are
something.
special, though.
Well, that's true. That's certainly true. But no, I've always understood that but like I said, they're trying to safeguard against people just thinking that almost like a superstition. But
That's rather confusing though, because
Yeah.
the saying he only went to Mass 5 times because he couldn't find 6.
yeah, we didn't receive communion at all 5.
Oh, he didn't?
No, maybe he didn't even receive communion of any of them, except on special occasions. I don't know. But there's St. Francis of Assisi.
I just thought.
He always attended Mass. He wanted to be there in the presence of the Blessed Sacrament. Yeah, he didn't go to communion. No, he didn't. Because by that time the church had really because there were people who were superstitious.
But aren't we taught that we receive special graces through the sacraments?
Yep.
So why not receive the sacrament?
Which is why if you go to the whole Mass, so you don't just pop in for communion.
Right.
Yeah. Or if you went to Mass, like say there's people I bring communion to where the spouse goes to Mass every day, and when I go give communion to the spouse, I don't give it to the other person because they've already received, and you're not supposed to receive it a second time outside of Mass. But no, if you do receive, you're there for the whole Mass, and especially if it's a different celebration. But even then, I always tell people, look, it probably is, not, what you say is true, but by the same token, it's not magic. It's not, something that we want to stay away from making some kind of a superstitious kind of thing where it's got you receive 2 hosts, or like me, I get a bigger host than you do. I get more Jesus than you do, right? No, it doesn't work that way. You receive once, that's usually sufficient, for the day, and but you really should receive every time you go to Mass. That's yeah. With the proviso that you don't want to get into the I hope I'm making myself. I don't want to beat it to death, but yeah.
So remember, canon law says you could receive once again.
Yeah, once again. There we go. Thank you. our registered canonist. But the well, that was the thing, the word hocus pocus. It's I don't know if you're aware, because it's like a magician says hocus pocus, abracadabra. I don't know where abracadabra comes from, but hocus pocus was an expression coined by Protestants to ridicule the Catholic Church. don't know if you're aware of this, because remember what the Latin for this is my body. Hoc est enim corpus meo. And so the prophet was saying, the priest just takes it and says, hocus pocus, hocus pocus, and it magically transforms the Eucharist, you know. And it was meant to be a derision, a ridicule of Catholic practice. But and if we fall into that, and that's always been,
Didn't know that.
that's always been a problem in the church, that when the church's teachings are not taught well, or not being received, people always fall into superstition. They always do. It happens all the time. That's why whenever we have a reformer in the church, like St. Charles Borromeo, yesterday, first thing he did, reform the catechism, establish PSR classes so the kids could be instructed, because we get away from that, and they just don't know what the church teaches, and teaching is everything. Our schools are vitally important, and because when it's not there, they just fall
That's
out.
something that's pretty sad too,
What's that?
getting away from Catholic education.
Yeah, we're having a big problem getting real Catholic school teachers. I mean, people who really believe the faith and practice it. I've heard stories of some of our Catholic high schools where they have some a Jewish guy or some Lutheran teaching religion. Go. I guess you can read it out of the book, but it really is. That's it.
Well, is that applicable to other courses besides religion and theology?
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with history teachers teaching history, but I wouldn't want theology or religion.
Well, ideally though, Bill, what you want is somebody who, because there's history and there's history, and there's a way of presenting from a Catholic perspective, see the hand of God and all this stuff. And when you got like when the old nuns used to teach that, they always brought that up. They always brought in that element, and even mathematics, science, I mean, I heard about there was a Boston College was supposed to be Catholic. They just elected, or recently appointed a guy, dean, who was an atheist. And he was saying how great it is, how open-minded this university is, that he, an atheist, can be the president of the university. I go, this is abandonment of the faith. I mean, this is basically saying we're not here to promote Catholicism anymore. And it's really sad. But it's best when it's, when I was, and that's how it got started, getting non-Catholics teaching Catholic school. For just an example, when I was at St. Simon's, this is 45 years ago, we had a guy who was Lutheran who taught German. He was the German teacher. Okay, People said, oh, but he's not, he's not. But then they hired a gal to do the music who was Lutheran. We're kind of coming up short here. And this gal was interesting. She, I came up to her one and I said, this is not, what you're doing is not really good liturgical music. We don't do it. And she gets all huffy with me and like, I know more than you do, Father. I thought, no, you don't. It's great when the pastor backs you up, but this guy didn't, and it was embarrassing. But oh well. But the ideal situation when we have the old sisters, and the old school sisters. Oh well, I went to St. Pius V, South Grand, but it got to the. Oh, I don't know. I don't want to get in.
The thing with Boston College.
Yeah.
Might that not be the result of universities taking government money?
Oh yeah. Oh sure.
They have to have boards.
Oh yeah.
Of all this different combinations.
Yeah. Back in 1967, Father Hesburgh, the guy from Notre Dame, called a meeting. It was in Minnesota. They call it the Land O'Lakes Conference. And Hesburgh had been taking money from the Rockefeller Foundation, basically because they were trying to change the church's teaching on birth control. And the Rockefellers were deeply into that. They felt that very acutely, that the world has too many people, and we need to, and the Catholics are the problem. And basically what came out of that meeting was that the Catholic schools, the Catholic universities, well, you know, we don't really have to be all that Catholic, you know, that we believe in academic freedom. We're here to teach what we teach. Well, the interesting thing is that if the Catholic Church has always said that what we teach is the truth. Universities should always teach the truth. Whether it's, you know, clashes, it's teaching the truth, and that's what it comes down to. There is no conflict between science and theology, you know, because it's all true. I mean, but that's what happened, and right after that, you know, all these Catholic universities. I mean, St. Louis U used to lead the diocese in adult converts every year, like 200, all through the university. You know, they would get 200 students every year to become Catholic. They're doing their job. That really fell off right after the Vatican Council and right after the Land O'Lakes thing. When my brother enrolled for St. Louis U, he could either enroll as a Catholic, which meant he had to take philosophy and theology classes, or he could register as an atheist. We didn't have to take those things. It used to be, in your senior year, you had to go to White House for a retreat. Yeah, you know, man, that went out the window. And it's sad. I mean, it really is sad. You know, I've often made the point that if I were like an Oral Roberts or somebody start my own religion, man, I'd love to have grade schools. Get the kids when they're young and teach them, bring them up right, you know. But if I had high schools to go with that in conjunction with the grade schools, oh man, you can really do some great stuff. Because teenagers are so enthusiastic and so, you know, you can really do great things with them. But if I had universities, oh my gosh, that would be nirvana. Have grade schools, high schools, universities. We could pass the faith along. Oh, it would be fantastic. Wait a minute. We had that. We had that. We had that.
It's all going to pot.
It's all going to pot. Yeah, Fontbonne just closed. I mean, it's closed, just gone, you know.
Well, all the grade schools have gone.
I know. Yeah. So anyway, but we got our work cut out for us, you know. We really do. And it's time to spit both hands. All right, let's go. Yeah, let's go get them. But anyway, yeah, that was the Land O'Lakes, and now I guess you know, people criticize some of the guys in recent years who were the Jesuits in charge of St. Louis U, but now they don't even have a Jesuit anymore. Some guy, some Italian, he's got an Italian last name. I forget what he is now. But
Costello?
is that no who?
Costello just, he's gonna
Costello.
retire this coming
Oh, is
year.
he? Okay.
But they've got a new,
Oh, okay.
not Jesuit.
Yeah. Oh no. And that's a shame. You know, I mean, I got great hopes of the young Jesuits too. They seem to be very decent guys also. That they're going to say, no, this is our coup. We're taking it back. We're taking it back, and let's just dare anybody to oppose us. I'd love to see that happen. And no, that's right. The Jesuits converted 2/3 of the world. You know, those guys had zeal. They had fire. They were organized. They were dedicated, and man, you know, the work they did, just unbelievable. And
MSU has a Catholic Studies program.
yeah. Well, you know, yeah, you've heard Dr. Peter Kraft. He's a good, very good man. I remember somebody asked him once, and he teaches at Boston College, and somebody asked him once, is it possible to get a Catholic education at a Catholic school anymore? He said, yeah, you still can get a good Catholic education. You got to know where to look. You got to know which professors to sign up for. But it can be done. You can get a really good first-class Catholic education at St. Louis U, at Boston College, even Notre Dame. And some of these, like Benedictine has really come on strong in recent years out in Kansas, and the Franciscan University Steubenville. That's really come on. And then sadly, Christendom College up on the East Coast. Aquinas, yeah. Yeah. We got the Augustine Institute up here. Very nice. Very nice. Very nice. Okay, let's move on here. MoveOn.org. As the Second Vatican Council says, that more perfect form of participation in the Mass, whereby the faithful after the priest communion receive the Lord's body from the same sacrifice, is warmly recommended. Yeah. We still have the thing called the Easter duty. You're aware of this? This was established because people just weren't going up for communion, like my grandma, that you had to receive communion between Easter Sunday and, well, it was Trinity Sunday in those days. I guess it is still Trinity Sunday now that I think about it. But now we say once a year, at least once a year, receiving Holy Communion. You can't say I'm too stinking of a sinner. Well, go to confession then, and by God, receive Holy Communion. It's warmly recommended that you receive it every Mass you go to, but at least once a year. You really, yes.
When your grandmother wasn't going, did she also not go to confession? Was that not something?
That I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. Grandma was, she didn't drive. Yes, she was. She didn't drive. I remember one time she had this great Irish wit. My brother and I were driving her to the bank or something, and we decided to stop at South County Shopping Center to get something. And it was July. And so we left the windows down, and we didn't lock the door. Grandma was sitting in the back seat. She didn't want to come along. And so we get out of the car, and she goes, what is it, Grandma? She said, don't you think you should be locking the doors and the windows? I go, what? She was thinking on a whole different level. She says, well, I know I ain't much, but nowadays they ain't so choosy. She was afraid somebody would claim her as a prize or something. Yeah, Grandma, sure. Okay, great. Yeah. I remember, oh gosh, we were still in McDonald, and my Grandma was doing house cleaning. I guess it was Saturday morning or something. And this old black lady comes up, God bless her, and basically looking for help, and she walks up to my mom and says, would you all be needing somebody to do some maid work around? I'd be happy to, because and my mom was, I'm so sorry, I can't, and it broke her heart, but to tell her no, she didn't know how to tell this lady no. So she goes across the porch where my grandma is. She just came down the stairs, and she's got the bandana on and everything. She's got her apron and everything. And the same thing to my grandma. My grandma said, well, I work for the lady upstairs. Pretty good. She was something. Well, anyway. Okay, well, let's do the 1389 here. The Church obliges the faithful to take part in the Divine Liturgy on Sundays and feast days, and prepare by the Sacrament of Reconciliation to receive the Eucharist at least once a year. Yes, I just said that. If possible, during the Easter season. Yeah, that's why it's called the Easter duty. That's one of the precepts of the Church, along with contributing to the support of the Church and fasting, abstaining, obeying the marriage laws, etc., etc. Okay. But the Easter duty is one of them, along with going to confession. But the Church strongly encourages the faithful to receive the Holy Eucharist on Sundays and feast days, and more often still, even daily. Yes, the daily Mass people. I always like the daily Mass people. They're just good folks, salt of the earth, really, really great folks. Since Christ is sacramentally present under each of the species, communion under the species of the bread alone makes it possible to receive all the fruit of the Eucharistic grace. Yeah, in other words, it's not like the host is half of the Eucharist and the chalice is the other half. No. Same way, that whether the host is this big or a tiny particle, it's still Christ. And body and blood, soul and divinity. It's just the species is different. It's under the species of the appearance of bread and wine, the actual essence. And what we do for people who have trouble swallowing the host, we can either put a super tiny particle on there, or else a little drop of the precious blood, which we do, for very extreme cases. I'm sorry, Judy.
Yeah, that confuses me because it says, unless you eat my body and drink my blood.
Because you are receiving body and blood, soul, and divinity.
Okay.
The essence of it. I mean, the appearance.
I understand.
The appearance isn't there, but the essence is. That's the whole point. The nature, the substance, whatever. Okay. For pastoral reasons, this manner of receiving communion has been legitimately established as the most common form in the Latin Rite, but the sign of communion is more complete when given under both kinds, since in that form the sign of the Eucharist meal appears more clearly. This is the usual form of receiving communion in the Eastern rites. Yeah, they have, most of the time, they use a little golden spoon, and they'll take it, and they'll go, and they'll just pour it into your mouth. Or they have a little glass straw that you sift through and then, put it in this little, like a dishpan type thing. The thing is, we talk about drinking from the chalice as a strengthening of the sign. In other words, to make it more impactful. You recall there's twice in the Gospels where Jesus refers to his passion as a drinking of a chalice. The first time is when James and John come up asking for the box seats in heaven. And he says, well, can you drink the chalice I drink from? Meaning, can you, suffer martyrdom as I will? And they said, sure we can. Okay, fine. The second time was in the Garden of Gethsemane, when he said, Father, take this chalice away. Again, referring to his suffering. Basically, when you come up to receive Holy Communion for drinking from the chalice, you're making the same statement that James and John made. Yeah, we're willing to suffer with you, Christ. And Jesus at the Garden of Gethsemane, yes, we're willing to undergo the passion. If you dare to drink from the chalice. And I put it that way because that's pretty much what it comes down to. You're making that very bold acclamation. You're not just washing down the host that you just consumed. You're making the statement, I want to share the passion of Christ. The drinking from that chalice is a metaphor, a symbol of Christ's passion, is what it comes down to. And so, it's not a question. The church is taught that unless at least half the people drink from the chalice, you shouldn't be offering the cup, because it becomes more of a sign of disunity than unity. And I talk with people giving out Holy Communion from the chalice, and even my own experience, it's the people up front that do more of the drinking. Because, because who wants to drink out of something that 30 people drank out of, It's a real thing that comes in there, which is why they have intinction and the other ways of receiving communion. I remember, I think I may have told this story before, but my mom's parish in South County, St. Margaret Mary, when they first started having the communion of both kinds, they had to get special ministers, and apparently the pastor picked this one gal who was a real good-looking gal. And not only that, but she really dressed up for Mass. I mean, she really hair and the makeup and the clothes and everything. Not that she dressed provocatively, like like a mini skirt or something, but she was just very nice. Really presented herself well. It used to drive my mom crazy because all the men would go to her for Holy Communion. And I said, Ma, I mean, I get you, but hey, men are men. Oh, no. Okay. I'm not defending it, but I'm just saying, yeah, I see the point. Oh well, anyway. But no, it really is. It's more than like I said, you don't need to do this, but you do it as an extra step beyond. We're drinking we're making the bold proclamation. We're going to drink participate in the Lord's Passion. Okay. That's it. We will meet, today's the 5th, the 19th? Dang it.
The 19th?
Yeah, 2 weeks. 2 weeks. What's that?
Program, and the lady that headed it up is no longer employed.
I'll be darned. So now the doors are going to stay on the airplanes?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that's part of it too. I think they heard going up to the great fact that people are like,
Hey.
there's so much bigger. How can the book is so much bigger than maybe that's it. Definitely bigger.
Yeah, very good.
I don't think so. How are you today?
Okay.
See you at church.
Very good, Jerry. We'll see you. Thank you, folks. You want to kill the system?
I know that, pretty sure that,